I think we all take it for granted when we show up at stores that product's there and it just appeared there. And I think back to when I was interviewing with American backhaulers out of college, and at the time I had no idea why semis are on the road, for example. And I remember the gentleman saying, well, every time something needs to be built or a product needs to be produced, it needs to be transported, across America globally. And it really opened my eyes to so much that happens behind the scenes for an industry to function properly.
Before we get started, I have to remind everybody, those of you that are watching or just joining, please feel free to leave a comment, join in with questions. We can get to them throughout the conversation, and like, share, and subscribe. We also have, we just started putting all of our YouTube and lives onto a podcast. So moving forward with Mandi, Kerr, it's also available on a couple of different podcast channels. So I'm really excited about our progress also. But Kevin, if you wouldn't mind giving a quick intro about yourself and how you kind of got into this industry, and who are you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, Mandi. It's super exciting to be a part of the group, and the Global Hemp Association obviously is doing some great things, so we're proud to be a part of it. Really, dating back previous to starting the 357 company, I was in the medical cannabis field and working for a couple well-known multi-state operators that came out of Illinois. One who actually went public today, Verano, and PharmaCann previous to Verano. So had just a great upbringing in the industry. Played some key roles both on the wholesale side and then also on operations for Verano, and really gained an appreciation for going far back into the supply chain, all the way to where you're actually planting which strains you want to plant, and then understanding where those yields come from and how to distribute those yields and raw material around a facility to ultimately put out an end product, all the way through the packaging room, and making sure you have enough of each product to go live into a market and make that a success, that launch a success. So it was a great experience. At the same time, we worked really closely with manifests and law enforcement as well to alert within the state of Illinois when we were transporting wholesale product to dispensaries. Everything was tracked and traced all the way back to the genetics, to the seed. You would, if you got pulled over, there would be an ability to go back to where that product actually came from. And when I was studying the hemp industry, I saw that component missing. And I knew that it would be a big deal because so many people downstream are impacted, and upstream as well, if during that transportation move something happens. There's an extraordinary amount of risk. So we identified that hole in the supply chain. I surrounded myself with some really solid logistics pros, and we secured a partner who had assets as well. And here we are. So it's been a great 18 months. It's been tough, but we're really fighting hard for the supply chain and everything we're doing.
Okay, so random question. I'm just going to dive right in. But when we say supply chain and procurement, right, what does that mean? And the reason I ask is it comes up all the time now. Before the pandemic, I don't think people really understood the supply chain or what the value of that was, or what even procurement meant, right? Can you kind of explain, why is this piece of what you're doing so valuable and so important?
It's a great question, because I think we all take it for granted when we show up at stores that product's there, and it just appeared there. And I think back to when I was interviewing with American backhaulers out of college, and at the time I had no idea why semis are on the road, for example. And I remember the gentleman saying, well, every time something needs to be built or a product needs to be produced, it needs to be transported, across America globally. And it really opened my eyes to so much that happens behind the scenes for an industry to function properly. And when I think of hemp, where we're craving for consistency, we're craving for reproducibility, that's even extremely more important to have a logistics partner within that supply chain to move the raw material around at the various stages. So, I think of folks all the way back that are selling the genetics. We ship seeds for our partners. We ship live plants. Now, after a farmer harvests, we've moved biomass to the dryers and then back to the farm. The raw material to a processor, for example, where the oil is going to be extracted for further remediation into tinctures. So it's really cool to be in that logistics seat, so to speak, because we're able to touch each part of that supply chain and really see where those challenges are. And that's why we just love sharing our network with folks once we build that trust with them, to be able to make those introductions to keep it going.
For sure. So tell me, what are some of those different pain points, or what are some of those differences or nuances in cannabis and hemp compared to some of these others that, when I look at hemp, it's legal, it's going into our building supplies, plastics, construction materials, food and consumer. I can see there's a little bit more concern because we've got this marijuana or THC or any of these others. But on the commodity side, why is it still a risk? And what are some of the risks that you unfolded that maybe people aren't aware of?
Yeah, I think it always goes back to education. Whether you're sitting down with your bank or you're talking to a carrier partner, or even educating one of our drivers, immediately, everyone thinks it's marijuana. It smells like marijuana. It looks like marijuana in its flower state. So, I think the challenges for hemp and cannabis is the PR, stereotype that has been labeled on it for all the years. And you're exactly right. There's so many uses for hemp, especially, you have medicinal, nutritional, industrial, it just goes on and on. The numbers are huge. The projections are massive, but, we're still building out the supply chain. So it's interesting. It's kind of working backwards. The opportunity and the market is there. Now we just got to figure out how to get there. And it goes back to the laws too, as well. We're really fighting hard for sensible policy for the hemp industry right now. Logistics seems to be one component that's left out of a lot of those conversations. Right now, those rules and regulations are centered around the farmers and the THC percent, which is huge for them. But they never take it a step further and give us that same buffer zone, so to speak, to transport that product over state lines if it's above 0.3% THC. So it gets tricky.
Okay, so when we talk about some of those nuances, right, or some of those pain points that we have when we're in this industry, transporting across state lines, even though it's in that federal, bill, the farm bill, why is it still a problem? Why is it still an issue that, to transport, say, from Oregon to Montana? So
each state, we found quickly early on that each state is able to enforce their own set of rules as well. The state of Florida comes to mind. I remember early on, they were one of the very few that came out and said, we're going total THC. There's a formula for this. It's no longer Delta 9. You have checkpoints when you enter the state. So our operations team, when they're not optimizing routes for our customers or shipping loads, they are reaching out to the Department of Ags at a state level, law enforcement, and really trying to build a relationship with both sides and really educate those folks on what we're doing, that we're coming through, and also try to get ahead of any meetings they might be having to change their own policy. There's 49 states. We don't go through all of them yet, but it's constantly keeping up with the latest changes that might be happening. And that's on us. That's our job. We take that extremely serious. And that's what we take off the rest of the supply chain's to-do list when they work with us.
The risk, right?
It's huge. And the risk is drug trafficking laws, right? I mean, it's not, destroy your field and gosh, a huge financial loss, that's traumatic in itself. But when you're transporting things over state lines and now you're in that category of drug trafficking laws, that's extremely serious. There's been a significant amount of stories where hemp has been misconstrued for cannabis and the driver's been arrested, sat in jail for a month, extreme high level fines, ultimately to be let go, but extremely expensive, traumatic, and not the look we're looking for as an industry as we're trying to scale right now.
No, we can't afford it, right?
No.
We're digging ourselves out. We can't afford to put more dirt back on top. And I think that's what happens.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so when we're talking about, give me a little bit, what got you into or really piqued your interest as a company to start focusing on providing a service that helps the hemp industry, hemp specifics?
Really, we saw a huge need. Obviously, I love the industry. I was in medical cannabis. It's just simply across the aisle, same plant. And that's where that vision stemmed from. And that was really the big conversation my partners and I had, who came from logistics, that, we're going to have to do a lot of work where it doesn't necessarily bring in dollars today. And, part of that, need that we saw an immense opportunity to fill that hole in the supply chain and ultimately leave our legacy. It's going to take more than us. I mean, obviously, but we really are obsessed with compliant operating procedures and making sure we're doing things the right way. And so really, I saw a supply chain that was going to need a pro in that component, and I loved that challenge. And I knew that ultimately, if we did it the right way, everyone would benefit from it.
For sure. So Jeremy was sharing one time in one of our meetings something that I feel really sets you guys apart, or something that's discussed often, and it's the insurance policy that's an option to protect the harvest or your crop, right? Can you explain a little bit what that means, and why if I am a farmer, should I be looking into this type of insurance? Or
Yeah, so you have crop insurance that you can get as a farmer, but a lot of those policies we've learned end as soon as the product leaves the facility. So when product is over the road, call it, and it's in a truck and it's going, from Colorado to Florida, and if there's an accident and that product is destroyed, the cargo insurance that the company has that's transporting your product does not have hemp written into their policy typically. I'm not naive enough to think there's not somebody else out there, but the amount of people that are telling us after the fact that they lost $100,000 worth of isolate or $50,000 worth of biomass, whether it was stolen or the truck got in an accident and caught on fire, they cannot put in a claim legally. A lot of the BOLs you'll notice will have the wrong class of freight on there. It'll say agriculture products. It won't identify that hemp is actually what the commodity was that was in the truck at the time. So, you're talking about insurance fraud, convenient ways to get around classes of freight. And as we enter, you mentioned, Jeremy, into the international lanes that we're going to start shipping for, once you get flagged, for falsifying your class of freight, you're out. So, with us securing that hemp cargo insurance early on, I think it was the fall of 19, that was a huge moment for us because we knew that was the closest thing to a guarantee we could provide to our customers in logistics. Lots of things go wrong in logistics. So, that was a way and now we're offering a complimentary level of 50,000. We think it's that important that it just kills when folks don't take advantage of the policy because you don't have to. So we're now including $50,000 worth of insurance for our customers. And we tend to see the majority of those loads do fall into that level. But if they do want an increase on that policy, they're able to take advantage of that too.
Sure. It's powerful when you think about loss, right? What are some of the losses that you see in your industry? And a couple come to mind, right? If theft, if I'm transporting hemp and somebody else thinks I've got a truck full of high THC cannabis,
Sure. And a lot of folks, what we're hearing too is the hemp flower is an attractive product because you can spray it with Delta 9 and different ways to get that THC added back in. So, you had, I think, 200-300 shipments lost by UPS last year. You've all heard the Idaho story where over $1 million of product was confiscated. Typically, we're hearing folks that haven't gotten to the point where they need to scale yet, where they feel they really need a logistics pro in their corner. So they're using the common carriers, FedEx, UPS, and, they get 10 through and the 11th one goes missing. And, all that money you saved along the way shipping with one of those carriers, it was all lost and you've caught up now, so that traumatic experience, that kink in your supply chain, right? Because you've just lost product that you needed to get to a customer. It's a trickle down effect. So what we find is, and we get it, people don't have the budgets to do logistics the right way yet. But when you have a loss, you kind of look back and go, that might have been the cost of business we should have factored in, because now we do have to go with a real group that knows what they're doing. And a lot of times folks will come to us, we'll share some experiences we've seen and heard, and the level of comfortability they have working with us. They know we're not price gouging them because it's a new product and it's risky. We're really looking out for the supply chain when they're working with us. So.
Sure. What's the difference as we get into, because I don't see very many people shipping thousands of acres of fiber, right, through UPS. So we're definitely moving into public and private transportation operations, right? But and really, I see rail eventually will be a sustainable option, because until now we haven't been able to ship brick by rail because it breaks. And now we will be able to, right? But it's not open yet. What happens to cost? You know, as we're entering commodity and having to drive around states to avoid millions of dollars being compensated from in material or equipment, how do we work together to really drive those costs down and provide opportunity to be competitive, especially on the global scale, when we don't have access to this and we have an extra 300 plus miles to add to some of our commutes that really should be a short, quick commute?
Sure, and it should be like every other industry that's allowed to, scale at a national level, which the Farm Bill clearly says. When you're talking the fiber products, obviously a lot less risk. We're not dealing with that THC level as much, if anything at all. Obviously, there are some stories where something has spiked, at some point in those industrial lanes, but very rare. However, what's been cool for us is a lot of our partners that either work in fiber or other commodities, once they've started working with us, they've seen that level of customer service, professionalism, transparency, visibility with our track and trace. They like to work with us as well with their other freight. They love that level of customer service. And we're hoping that folks that are on the fiber side of the lane, although you can ship that with a little less risk, that they would still want to work with us. We're from the industry. And I think ultimately it goes back to the rules and regulations at the federal level. We need some standardization. The supply chain needs to be able to work with each other, whether you're in Colorado or Wisconsin, especially when it comes to oil that's in process. Right now, when you extract the oil from the plant, it's concentrated. So those levels, whether it's 0.3 now turns into 3%. And that's a narcotic, according to the federal government, to go over state lines. So we need better track and trace. We need one source of truth within that supply chain, like some of the guys at Global Commodities that we're working with, that really help standardize not only the price points, but also gives the confidence to the government and to the DEA to say they have true track and trace. We know this oil hasn't been messed with. It's going on a professional logistics company, and it's going from point A to point B with what you mentioned earlier, the shortest route, which ultimately saves people the most amount of money. Gas prices are going up, and we can't be going around states and increasing 700 miles to a trip for much longer. For now, we'll do that to keep people safe.
Well, sure. Now the risk is that distance and added cost is worth it because of the risk, but we've got to eliminate that risk, that this is really no longer, or the majority of what I see moved, right, and needing to be moved are going to be bales of,
right.
It's not flour necessarily. And especially where so many states right now I saw are banning flour. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of states, it's on the ballot now. There's states voting on smokable, especially, but I think short term, maybe the industry needs to work at separating the two, have the medicinal on one side, the industrial on the other, and really, rather than trying to go for one set of rule changes for everybody, which would be, the 1% across the board, whether you're transporting it or growing it. But, maybe in the meantime, we need to fight a little harder for that industrial side, because it's coming, it's going to be massive. And, you're talking, a real commodity, and it needs to be treated as such, in our opinion.
Absolutely. And protected the same way. Right. And like you said, when we talk commodity prices, our profit margins are getting smaller and smaller when we're getting 50,000, 100,000 acres being grown just within our small networks, right?
Right.
And, the opportunity is so much bigger. And when, I guess now my question that we need to probably look at is that end use, is it consumable versus becoming is it for health and wellness and edibles versus an end use product like roofing tiles or concrete or textiles? And how it's transported or covered, right?
Sure. I think the medicinal side's obviously huge. The projections are massive when it comes to CBD. We all know that. But, I think ultimately, in my opinion, the industrial side, once we get our footing and we get some momentum, maybe 2-3 years down the road, is going to, I believe, dwarf the CBD side. CBD hemp is still competing a little bit with the cannabis side of the aisle, where the industrial, you have definitely your fair share of competition with building materials, for example, that are commonly used, and codes that'll have to be changed. But it's coming. So we do a lot of work with some folks out of DC. I'm working personally with ASTM International on their subcommittee to try to develop that policy, that wording that we can then go back and present to the powers to be for sensible policy.
Yeah. Well, shout out to ASTM. They're doing a great job. Darwin's incredible. I don't know if that's who you connected with, but he's a great guy. So yeah, definitely. So what are some of the differences, I guess, that you've specifically seen when it comes to hemp and say another commodity that you transport, or any of these other products? What are some help me understand, not knowing the transportation, is it packaging? Is it, what are some main things that really need to be tweaked in that supply chain that a normal consumer wouldn't know?
Packaging, for sure. You hit the nail on the head. How these farmers are storing their product is going to be incredibly important to hold the value of the product first and foremost. It helps us as the person transporting it that it's packaged properly. Obviously, it's easier to handle. We do run dedicated trucks, so there's not other freight in the truck, so it's a little less important for us although we try to secure everything down, if it wasn't packaged properly and it wasn't fault of ours, it's not ruining other people's freight, so to speak. But I think one of the big differences is a lot of the folks we ship for don't have transportation departments, logistics departments on the customer end. A lot of times it's a farmer meeting you at the farm, or it's a processor meeting you at the lab, and sometimes they're not there. They fail to show up even sometimes. So it's not like shipping for a Fortune 500 company that has their own shipping department and you're on the schedule, and Tom's going to be there and he's going to check in your truck and scan the bill of lading and send it to you. These farmers are a lot of times harvesting. They're in the middle of their day, and there's not really that scanning ability and send paperwork in even at times, which for us, paperwork is extremely important. So we have preventive measures in place in case we ever run into that. But those are some of the challenges that you wouldn't expect, just having that basic loading dock when you show up, for example. So there's a lot of questions you need to ask before you go in there.
Well, I was just distracted by this awesome comment, and I wish I could see who it was, but it's showing up on my screen as Facebook user, reminding me to smile. It says a lot, making the world a better place to live. So thank you, whoever it was. That was a good reminder. On your business moving forward, where do you guys see yourself, especially as more and more the need is increasing? International travel is coming up more and more. Kate had a good question, wondering how do you deal with international travel and international transportation? What does projection look like moving forward?
International's here. We have Jeremy Powers, obviously, is with us. He's an absolute, just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to shipping international commodities. He's obsessed with the paperwork. Anybody could put something on a plane, as he likes to say, and send it, lie about what it is, right? But when it gets caught up in customs and you have a $22,000 fee to get it back home, even, which is a story we heard recently, it's not good for your business. It's not good for the industry. So Jeremy's building out, I'd say 6 or 7 different lanes right now. We're going to go live, I think, next week on our first one. We've gone extremely slow. I know there's folks that have shipped overseas and have done it successfully. We don't want to do it once. We want to do it 100 times over. So that's definitely here. The cannabis side of things, we're looking very close at. We're excited about it. We feel like we'll be ready when the federal constraints loosen up a little bit. So we're I think in the pole position, so to speak, when that opportunity opens up, but not yet. But we'll be ready. So I see that coming. Depending on when the federal laws change, it could be tomorrow, it could be 5 years from now. In the meantime, there's a lot of work to do with hemp. So I think short term, international, and then really getting into the supply chain on the industrial side for us. We've done a great job with CBD. That's how we came, to be known, but we're more than just, shipping high risk, high value products. We do like to move commodities as well.
Well, and you've got quite the background, right? You guys are not just hemp. You guys have shipped a lot of other commodities.
Yeah.
A lot of other. Tell me a little bit about the difference, or what difference do you see, if any, in the CBD, shipping CBD versus hemp, industrial hemp, especially
you just, you have to pay a little bit more attention to detail when it comes to analyzing paperwork, right? There's labs that come through, the COAs. You got to make sure the COA is not falsified. You're talking a little bit more about, when it comes to that route optimization component. It's either way, we like to say, and it's our mission statement, we listen, then execute. We're all about, getting to know our partners, understanding what their needs are. Really, we had a gentleman call in yesterday, for example, to ship some extraction equipment, and there's a lot to that shipment. So we really need to understand what the sizes, the dimensions, the handling, what does this customer's SOP look like, and what do they expect us, to replicate for them while it's in transport. Obviously, you don't want things destroyed, and how we handle it is part of it. But when you're talking about a group that is going for a CGMP accreditation on the CBD side, there's certain steps that they ask us to put in our SOP that we got to make sure we're doing, or else it screws up their model. So really, it's just paying a tremendous amount of attention to detail, and really listening to your customers. And we think that's what one of the things that sets us apart when we're shipping other freight and not just CBD.
Okay, I like it. Well, I want to give a real quick shout out to our sponsor at Western Ag Works. They seed processing, cold storage, equipment manufacturing. They've got some awesome hemp processing. They'd probably be a great contact for the number of people that you guys process for, but some equipment that's really, really awesome. Reach out to Kerr. They're out in Colorado. Kerr's actually in California. If you guys have any questions about it, don't hesitate to holler. And Kevin, I've got a question. You made a statement on your LinkedIn that I want to ask you about. You said that, I don't remember if you said you put it yourself in a place, or you pride yourself on being around people that don't just tell you what you want to hear, but are actually honest and truthful, right? So where did that come from, and what experience have you had that, really put that out there? What's your...
The first part of that is surrounding yourself with people you can trust. Growing up in the city of Chicago, I don't know if it's a street smarts thing, but you kind of have a really good radar for folks you can't trust. And, part of that is trying to sort through people that are telling you things that they just feel like you want to hear. There's just too much of that going on. I saw it a lot in corporate America, and even in your personal life too. So it's just a little motto that I like to live by. I like to surround myself with some really solid friends, and people that would have your back when times get tough. And then also, I don't want to be around folks that aren't going to, be honest with you, whether you're messing up or whether you're doing a great job. I want the truth. And, I think ultimately when you find those kind of people, your network becomes stronger because of it.
Okay, so I think that's the same for business, right? And this is something that I really pride myself on is I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I'm constantly trying to surround myself with people that are more advanced than I am, have done more than I am, have better experiences that I can learn from, right? How do you vet those people? Besides your intuition, if somebody is doubting themselves or curious about how to break into the market, because more often than not, this market has a lot of talkers, right? There's a lot of people are trying to make it. We're trying to create an industry. We're trying to build the largest, the biggest, the best, right? And nobody else is really doing it yet, right? We're at the start of this huge growth opportunity. And so there's a lot of fake it till we make it. And so how do you as a professional really vet that and sort that?
Getting to know folks in the supply chain, whether it's through, word of mouth or, having your own experiences with people, we get it. People are trying to pretend they're bigger than they are right now. But it's really those folks early on that were, doing things dishonestly, not paying their tabs, brokering deals that weren't true. You've heard it all before. And that's really why I'm really excited that this becomes standardized and there's one source of truth when people are buying products. But that intuition's been definitely challenged. When you start early in a supply chain, it's tough. And I think our background with who we are and the types of people we are has helped us not kiss as many frogs, so to speak, that you that you may in an industry like this in its infancy. And we saw it in cannabis as well too. When we started the medical cannabis program in Illinois, a lot of rec folks, there was this butting heads between the two sides. One side has to have follow the rules and have a bunch of money, and the other side has been doing it forever this way. And, then you start to see, different beliefs start to kind of butt heads with each other, so to speak. So, I just think in business in general, you got to keep your eyes and ears open and, really just staying in the know as much as possible. And again, building that network. We've been in this now 18 months. And I think we have a tremendous group of strategic partners around us, whether it's associations like yours or, the various other ones we're a part of. You start to realize who the good people are, and you just stay close with those folks, and usually good things happen.
Absolutely. Like attracts like, right? And paying attention to who's around. I'm the same. You said something, well, and that's really the whole reason I started this, right? I realized really fast there wasn't an opportunity for people to come together and build those relationships on a much larger scale. And so being able to do that is where my passion comes in. You said something, standards. I'm curious on your opinion, what is the immediate need of standards? And I bring this up also because I hear often from consumers, they don't understand that there aren't standards down to the size of fiber or how it's planted or how things are harvested, right? In your opinion, knowing that pretty much the entire supply chain needs standards applied to it, where do you see the biggest need or focus where it needs to be? What standards immediately need to have the most attention?
I think on the CBD side, it goes back to that THC percent. I mean, we absolutely need to have a sensible level where it's go or no go. And, I think if you ask 100 people in the industry, 99.9% of them will tell you it's 1%. At that threshold, people feel like you can get high from the cannabinoids. I think that needs to be standardized. I think that needs to be set. And then I also think there's a need to standardize how we're coming up with the price of the commodity itself. You can't just take the last 100 sales and divide them by 100 and come up with an average price per pound. People took care of their product differently. They stored it differently. It tested differently. There's a lot of different.
Harvested.
I'm sorry.
Yes. At different times, harvested at different times, watered differently. Yeah.
Dried it on time. There wasn't mold in the bottom of the super sack. So I think on the CBD side, standardizing how we're coming up with the price per pound and putting all those factors into one, formula, so to speak. And I think that's what the global smart commodity group is going to be doing. Then, I think it's that 1%. We have to be able to do business with each other. And part 3 to that would be the in-processed oil that has spiked because it's concentrated, but it's concentrated only to go further in the supply chain for further remediation. On the building side of things, the industrial side, we're starting to do some work with the U.S. Hemp Builders Association, and a lot of that stuff's over my head. I mean, obviously, these are some of the smartest people in the room. Talk about not being the smartest guy in the room, but I love being around them because they are talking about those things you mentioned. How should herd be packaged? What's the optimal size? And that's just super. It still shows how early on we still are. But I think if there's a group of people that are going to stem those conversations and eventually figure it out, it's folks like them. So,
for sure.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Well, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about smart. I think you said global smart commodity, right?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with their group, but I see a huge interest, and I read a lot now about this need for that checks and balance, right? That grading system to give the industry some standards so that our consumers and farmers or buyers And farmers, whether it's the mills or the secondary processing or the textiles, construction industries, know what grade they're paying, right?
Right.
And I think that that's a piece that's just not really understood, right? Even on our farmers, they assume, or our industry leaders that may have focused on CBD or high THC, you know, they assume then that their stocks are fiber quality,
right,
you know, or textile grade fiber, right? And they're just going to sell into the fiber market, and understanding that those are very different, and that even if they do get sold in, it's at a much lower grade or lower price, which changes drastically how it's shipped or how it's purchased. Or yeah.
So what we're excited about is it brings one source of truth to everything you just said. So all those factors would be in some sort of an algorithm, let's call it, but they will be utilizing blockchain for not only to hold the money in the transaction, which is a really big deal for us too. You know, not having a history with folks, not being a Fortune 500 company, you know, there's some considerable risk when you're moving freight for somebody that doesn't have a track record of good credit, for example. So for us, that's
most people in this industry don't have that because it's been done black market.
Correct.
Not even
Absolutely.
business wise. It's just they went from closing books, burning records, to now being publicly, you know, a public entity. And it's it's just there isn't history. Not even that they are bad history. Like, there's no
correct. History or not, you still need the money, right? So what we like about Global and working with them is they're going to consummate the deal. They're going to utilize blockchain for a couple different things. A big one for us is securing the COA in the lab directly from the lab electronically via blockchain. And for us, that gives us that extra level of confidence that that lab hasn't been messed with. Really generating more deals because there is a source of truth there. Folks don't feel like they're getting ripped off. I think they'll start to build their business and ultimately drive more traffic for the entire supply chain. You know, I think it's a safe place for folks to go and meet each other and do business. So it makes sense.
I love it. There's quite a few, and I think even creating more of an opportunity for our farmers to have direct end access, and like you said, it's those vetted relationships of trusted security. And I think it's even more important as we're in this emerging market, you know, and there's so many rules and different changing rules constantly.
And farmers, let's face it, they're used to producing, harvesting, and ultimately selling that raw material, and it leaves their facility. You know, they're not used to splits and, hey, we'll pay you later. They want to go back and do it again. That's just how they're built. So I think if they knew they had an outlet for next year's harvest in the year to follow, that's going to build more confidence. That's going to keep people in the game. You know, we've lost a lot of farmers that haven't come back, you know, this year. But, you know, new folks are coming into the mix. But, you know, they need to be able to have that outlet and that consistency. And it all starts with the farmer. I mean, if it's not for the farmer, we don't have an industry. So we got to figure out a way to stabilize that for those farmers, and then, you know, kind of work out the kinks moving forward.
So Kevin, if someone wants to get in touch with you, farmer and or a buyer, how do they reach you guys? How does somebody?
You can go to our website, www.357company.com. You can call us at 844-357-SHIP. Shoot us an email, you know, reach out though. You know, we encourage people to not wait till the last minute. You know, we can pull off some miracles. But I you know, you have to be able to pull off miracles in logistics, or else, you know, you're going to sell yourself short with some customers. But a lot of folks that we talk to and are actually moving product for now, you know, we met them over a year ago. You know, they were just thinking about their build out, you know, what lane in the supply chain they were going to fill. And a lot of those folks now are ready, and they've gone through a harvest season, or they've now opened their processing facility and they're importing biomass. So, you know, really reach out ahead of time. You know, there's a lot of folks that have forgot to budget logistics, and they've done deals, and now they're both looking at each other going, Amazon's not taking it for free. Holy cow. So, you know, we want to manage people's expectations, you know, be transparent with what the costs are going to be, probably make bring up some ideas that they haven't thought of yet, so they can prepare ahead of time. But absolutely, if there's something that needs to be shipped tomorrow, call us. But also don't hesitate to reach out just because you may not have anything at the moment. So.
Okay, so what in the United States, what areas would you say are biggest buyers? Where are you shipping the most to?
We're shipping quite a bit to Illinois right now. Obviously a lot of biomass comes out of the Northwest, comes out of Montana, Colorado. We ship quite a bit down into Florida. We're starting to, obviously the Kentuckys, the Tennessees, the Carolinas. We're really excited for the Midwest. We're from here. We're looking, we have the best soil, they say, in the Midwest. We have a ton of farmers, and selfishly, hopefully Tennessee starts to ramp up. I'm hoping to move down there and expand the business to Tennessee in the next year. So most hemp farmers in America, they say in Tennessee, so why not be there?
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then internationally, where would you say the most is shipping around, to and from?
Right now, it seems like the most quote requests come to us that want to go to Switzerland. Switzerland has a 1% THC threshold, so a lot of folks want to move flower into Switzerland. Then I would say the EU, obviously Spain, we're getting ready to move to. There's some conversations with the Caribbean at the moment, but Jeremy definitely is keeping his finger on the pulse there and working through all those SOPs for us at the moment. So I'll let you know as soon as we start to move those lanes.
Yeah, I'm curious. I just am always wondering what's moving. And then what about product? Without naming names of companies necessarily, verticals or industries, where do you see the biggest spike in interest? On where's product going into? Is it
oils? For sure. Majority of people want to sell oil. Typically, we're looking for buyers of that oil. Folks that are
you're not talking about biofuel oils. You're talking about
the CBD oil.
Yes.
CBD oil. Yeah. So going into tinctures, vapes, edibles, we're working with some groups that are, CGMP, EU GMP, big aspirations, real, track and trace type products that are pure, lab tested, going to market to sell at the retail level. So that seems to be the biggest spike, and I see the biggest growth for the moment on the medicinal side. So a lot of oil that is, tea-free seems to be shipped around. Again, we go back to that THC threshold when it still needs further remediation. It's again a narcotic to bring it over state lines, so it's difficult.
Right. Well, it's fascinating to me. My entire year has been spent talking about the industrial manufacturing, into every other industry, and still the biggest buys and biggest moves are around the CBD. And so it's just
still,
yeah,
for I think for a bit longer, but I think ultimately you would know more than me. I mean, the industrial side is potentially just massive. I think it's more in the wheelhouse for a farmer.
Sure.
It's more of a product that should be grown outdoors. The cultivation centers out of Illinois and the medical cannabis program are state of the art, retrofitted, temperature controlled. It's going to be difficult to scale a real CBD farm outdoors, in my opinion. There's just too much disease that can creep in, and a lot more to it. So I think once the farmers realize how to get into the industrial side, a portion of their farms or a portion of their rotation will always start to include the hemp commodity.
I agree with you. And I think we're stuck on the commodity side the same we were on the CBD side. The processing have had to catch up. We've got to have the processing before our farmers can really grow it in the mass scale and then transport it into secondary processing or manufacturing, right?
Right.
But yeah. Well, I'm really excited to see the growth, and I'm really excited to help you as an association. How can we support you? Who are your target prospects? If somebody's looking to do business, who really do you service the best?
Really, it's the entire supply chain, when it comes to hemp. Obviously we do other commodities, we ship other products for, our folks that have other businesses. We do a good job at shipping freight. But when it comes down to, I'd say anything that's compliant, nothing that's hot, nothing that's in a gray area. We're not playing ball in the gray areas right now. We just don't think, although we're cheering for folks in the supply chain, we don't think it's in the best interest of the supply chain. God forbid something happens. So I'd say it's the biomass all the way through the oil that doesn't need further remediation. We can ship live plants. We have an awesome racking system that's modular, take down, ship back, real simple, inexpensive. And again, that hemp cargo insurance is all encompassing. So everything from seed to final product, you will have the security of knowing and the comfort that, gosh forbid, anything happens during transportation, you're not at a total loss. And there are some policies that do cover final product when it's in transport, but a lot of times when that product's moving off the farm and it's still in that flower state, especially, it's not covered. So, really, anyone in the supply chain that has compliant product, we want to talk to, and we'll be honest with them if it makes good business sense for them to work with us, or maybe it is something you continue to go with UPS and cross your fingers, and we'll be open with our customers about the best path we see for them. But we encourage folks to, work with a pro, don't take on the risk, and, know that you have someone else here that's on your side first and foremost from an industry perspective, and a transportation company second when it comes to the hemp industry.
Well, I think that's you nailed two really important parts: is a partner, somebody that's in the industry that knows the rules and all of the, you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's where I just wouldn't even know where to look. And I know that a lot of our other members and association members are the same way. So I give a shout out. Thank you very much for taking care of this part of our industry. It's a topic that comes up all the time. I'm really excited to have you guys involved, and however we can continue to support you, don't hesitate to reach out. I know you have a call here coming up, or another interview that I'm pretty stoked about. And so we'll wrap up here in just a few minutes. If you have anything else you want to share, I'd turn it over to you real quick. And then.
No, I think you guys are doing, or y'all, I need to start learning how to say y'all. The guys comes from the Chicago upbringing. No, really keep doing what you're doing, because, there's some associations that don't give back, to the industry and really work as hard as you're doing. And it's extremely important to bring people together. We've been lucky to be affiliated with some really good associations. We like to get involved with those associations. So keep doing what you're doing. You have a heck of a following, a great group of people that, from the couple of meetings we've been in on so far, it's an impressive group. So the industry needs more of that and more collaboration. So eventually we'll all be going back to conventions and being face to face. I can't wait. But until then, this is what we have, and you guys are really doing a great job to, keep us engaged with other components of the supply chain and other players. So thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much. I look forward to continuing conversation. If anybody needs anything or wants to reach out to Kevin or anyone on his team, don't hesitate to holler at me or Kevin directly. Other than that, Kevin, I guess I'll reach out. I'd love to invite you to a specific conversation around this, especially transporting some of our members' crop. And so I'll get you involved in those discussions. And then other than that, good luck today.
Thanks, Mandi. It was great to be on. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
For sure. See you later.